Now, as we move through projects, we want to think about how do we bring it all together. The way you bring it all together is through a knowledge area called integration management. This is where you bring all of the pieces together. And you, the project manager, will use a few key processes to manage all of these other processes and integrate them. So one of your processes, develop project charter. Another is develop project management plan. Another is develop, deliver and execute the deliverable, right? You're building it from what you planned. And also collecting knowledge, right? It's called knowledge management. Another one is monitor and control. And another process is called integrated change control. And then your final process is closing the project or phase. And so you'll use those processes to manage all the processes going on around you. And the RACI will help you to clarify who's doing what by activity. So integration management is what you are. In fact, it's so important, they could call the project manager, instead of a project manager, they could call him an integration manager. It's that important. It's who you are. You are always integrating. And your key document is the project management plan that you built in detail and the project charter that goes with it. It's those items that you will use to monitor and control and perform integrated change control on and close along the way as you manage these multidisciplinary teams, right? And you'll manage them through various phases. We talked about phases a little bit ago, but phases are a logical breakdown of how the project should develop. So the nice thing about Project Manager, and I said this week one, it's a framework that can fit into any life cycle with phases. So what if you use the ITIL life cycle? You'd have a design phase, a strategy phase, a design phase, a testing phase, an implementation phase, and a transition phase. If you work in automotive construction or in IT or in Greenpeace, you have your own phases, and each phase will be different, and it will have a phase gate at the end. That's basically the go, no-go decision. Did we accomplish what we needed to in this phase so that we could go forward into the next? Which takes us into risk, right? These are risky decisions, and so projects themselves are risky. In fact, we said that a project by definition is two things, temporary and unique. If it's unique, there are things we haven't done before. Well, that's the definition of a risk, which is an uncertainty. There's a relationship. There's a reason projects are risky, right? And we're here to minimize and manage that through the waterfall approach in project management. And so we have sub-processes in the knowledge area of risk management that we're going to use. Now, on our team will be a dedicated risk management team, right? And think of a massive project like the Freedom Tower in New York City or some 10-year building project, right? You're going to have a risk management team. So it makes sense. All you're doing is guiding and managing and taking responsibility for the various processes listed here. You want to develop a risk management plan, which is going to define how you're going to do these other processes, how you're going to identify risks, what's your approach to qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. What is your risk response planning approach? How about monitoring and controlling risks and managing the risk register? Those are sub-processes to the overall risk management knowledge area. And so first we want to start out by doing risk management planning, right? We need to define the constraints on those processes you saw on the last slide, or they refer to them as sub-processes, right? We need to define those. We need to define the metrics, the limits. We talked about qualitative and quantitative standards. Well, what are those ranges that we want to apply? Does the company have something they can offer that they expect us to use in this project? Does the PMO or project management office that we've already talked about provide something that needs to be built into our risk management plan? Basically, a risk management plan tells me how I'm going to do something. Any management plan tells me how I'm going to do something. In this case, the management plan is telling me how I'm going to manage risk on the project. Some risks, this is just 3. You could have other categories: preventable, strategic, and external type risks, right? So so you want to clarify your definitions of risk, and then you want to go out and identify all risks. Now, 2 points: 1, by process you're identifying all risks, but by philosophy, even though you've identified all risks up front, you are always on the lookout for additional risks, because they're there, but have we spotted them? You might have fun doing a Google on the black swan, right? When it comes to unidentified risks, unidentified items, right? We're always looking. Yet, officially, we have found all, right? So in risk identification, we're going to list them all. Then they're in no particular order yet. Then we're going to categorize them, because remember, if I can categorize a group of risks, maybe I can apply a single response to that entire group also. Then I will do qualitative risk analysis, and the point to qualitative is I want to prioritize that risk register I just built in the last process. I identified all my risks. All my risks end up on what I call a risk register, just a list of risks. Now I want to subjectively apply some criteria, which I already listed in my risk management plan we talked about here, the risk management planning, right? I've already identified how I'm going to do qualitative risk analysis. And what I'm doing now is using subject matter expertise to quickly rate risks and reprioritize. I take that same risk register, and now I have a priority. See, before I just had a risk register, just a list of risks and categories and maybe risk owners. But now I have that same list reordered in a priority. What is most at risk to me? And I can do a risk matrix which may look something like this. It could take various forms. You could use letters, you can use numbers, even though it's qualitative, even though it's subjective, you can use numbers, or you can use words. And we're always assessing in qualitative or quantitative analysis, risk analysis, the probability versus the impact. If I have something that's highly probable, it's going to happen, the chances of it happening, yes, and its impact is huge, I am going to develop a response to it, right? Where something is very low probability and low impact, I still want to identify it. It can change over time, so I monitor it, but I may not do anything about it right now. And so risk categories, remember I mentioned you could take the risk register and put categories against them. You might say cultural or political or regional or virtual. If I were building a house in Florida, I might have water risks as a category, right? From hurricanes or from leaks overnight, heavy deluge rainfalls that they get, etc. Right? So I want to categorize my risks. That helps me to manage them. And then I want to do for only the few risks. Now remember, I just took the risk register, then I did qualitative risk analysis, and I reprioritized it. For the very top priorities, for the ones with the highest probability and impact, There I will do quantitative risk analysis, which is much more methodical. It's going to take time. I'm going to go out and do real research, maybe marketing studies or impact analysis, etc. That takes time and uses resources. So I really only want to do them for the most impactful or most likely risks. And then, of course, I could have a failure mode and effect analysis is one approach that the literature proposed to evaluate risks along the way. And so they do a nice example of that in the book. Now, another way to look at all of this is in a decision tree. And a decision tree, it looks like it's a tree on its side, doesn't it? It looks like a tree laying down with the point of the Christmas tree perhaps here and the base here. And so I have a decision point, and basically none of these numbers exist yet. All I'm doing is going EMV, question mark, I don't know, my earned monetary value. And then I know I have three options. I can use a gas only mode for whatever this project was, or I could use a hybrid approach, or I could use a gas and hybrid models in another form. Well, each one of those has a probability and an impact based on price fluctuations, right? And what I'll do is I will total those versus my expected annual payoff, and I'll add those numbers back and see which approach I should take. And of course, my expected monetary value is highest with this second approach, with this 50% probability, but the impact being the highest here. That makes sense because they all have a 50% probability. All right, but I've multiplied those together and I back it into a decision. That's actually a decision tree using and I said earned monetary value. That's cost management. This is a risk approach, which is basically probability times impact. This is a risk approach. Expected monetary value. That's what that stands for. EMV. Earned value is back in cost management. This is expected monetary value. And it's a risk approach using the decision tree. And so when I'm looking at risks, I go, okay, now what do I do with them? Well, risks by project management are either a threat or an opportunity. We naturally look at risks as a threat. That's the way we see life. It's why we buy car insurance, for example, or house insurance. And we can avoid, transfer, mitigate, or accept. Now, for an opportunity, we're looking to create that opportunity or make it happen that's going to enhance our project. Maybe something tied to strategy. And so I can exploit, share, enhance, or accept. There's a good description of those in the book that you can refer to. And then, of course, I have to monitor and control. We're going to cover those in later chapters in this course. Okay. Then going back, always updating my risk register, my list of risks and their categories and the risk owners. Okay, that wraps it up for this week. Look to see you online. Thank you.